Welcome to Leading Your Culture, brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Bill Nye. While serving in the United States Air Force, I was selected to attend the U.S. Air Force Leadership School, which is still the foundation for many of my leadership beliefs. That experience set me on a course for a successful career in business, consulting, mentoring, training, and speaking. In this series, my guests will come from many disciplines to discuss the most serious and at times not so serious topics on leadership and culture. Welcome back, everyone. Excited for today's episode. So I have two special guests with me today that we're going to tell a story about how our worlds collided. It wasn't planned. It came out of nowhere, but it's all about in leadership. You know, leaders have a couple of responsibilities, and one is to always be looking to add people to the team that will have a positive impact. And the other is, what can you do to improve and enrich other people's lives? And so, of course, I'm in Friendswood, Texas this morning. We have Jay Melton joining us. Jay is a regional manager for Artcraft in Richmond, Virginia. And then we have Anne Marie Hidalgo, who is joining us from Tampa, Florida, and she's a community manager for Morgan Properties. So what do the three of us have in common? Well, on one particular day in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, our worlds suddenly collided. Now, Jay and I were working together at Berger Communities at the time. Jay was our director of talent, and I was the chief operating officer. And we were on our way to visit one of our properties in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, called Village Square. And as we approached the property, the one thing I know about Jay is that he always wants to eat. And so, you know, it's about 11:30 in the morning. And I said to Jay, if we go to the property, we're going to end up not being able to have lunch. So let's go ahead and grab lunch now, and then we'll turn around and go back to the property. Of course, Jay was agreeable to that because he always was. And so I just randomly chose a diner. I had never been to this diner, couldn't even tell you the name of the diner today. But we pull into a diner, we get out of the car, and we walk in, and the first thing you can't help but notice is this massive salad bar. So me being me, I said to the hostess, and Jay, you probably remember this, I said to the hostess, she asked how many, and I said, well, before we're seated, let me ask you a question. Do y'all have a salad bar? Now, it was obvious that they had a salad bar. Ray Charles could see the salad bar. And so, you know, I'm just trying to have a little fun. And Jay, I'm sure you remember her reaction. She was annoyed by this. She wasn't humored on any level. She just turned around and pointed at the salad bar out of just annoyance, and then grabbed two menus and said, "Follow me." And Jay, I don't know if you remember this part, but you turned around and looked at me and you said, "She hates you." And to which I just
happened a lot, but
right, it happened all the time. And I just kind of nodded my head and chuckled, and off to the table we go. And she sits us at a booth, which just happened to be right next to the salad bar. And so we're sitting there, and our server comes over to our table and greets us. And the first thing I ask is, "Excuse me, before we order, do y'all have a salad bar?" And the waitress turns to the salad bar, throws her arms out in the air like she's on a Broadway musical stage, and says, "Do we have a salad bar?" Ta-da! And so Jay, take it from there.
yeah, you know, I think this is more than anything so far. This is a great ad for Prevagen, because the fact that you remembered that it was 11:30 in the morning, what property we were headed to, that's all pretty amazing. Because I couldn't even remember who you guys were when we got on the call this morning, but it's all coming back to me now. So
Okay, good.
no, the fact that you know, I don't know what was going on in Anne Marie's day at that point. I don't know how long she had been at work. I don't know what she did the night before, but I knew what she did in that moment. And what she did in that moment was to make us feel welcomed and excited about that salad bar. We could see it. It's a normal salad bar. There was nothing fancy about it, but it was big and it was right there. But the way she sold it was, this is your salad bar. And you were inviting
Neither
us
one
to
of us
yours.
ordered a salad.
Right, yeah. And I couldn't tell you to this day if we even used the salad bar, if we enjoyed our meal. None of
We
that
didn't.
mattered. What
We
mattered
didn't.
was the experience that we had with our server,
We
and
didn't use the
because
salad
of
bar.
that, that's right, yeah. But because of the greeting, that you didn't even say a word, at first. It was just her excitement in that moment to introduce this obsessively large salad bar to us. um it showed that she was into her job, and whether you were or not, we thought you were into your job, and that you loved it. And from there, the conversations just rolled on, and we got to know so much about this person and the intricacies of her life in a server role. And we'll go on as we go through this thing, but
Yeah,
um
I'm gonna interrupt you for a moment because unbeknownst to us in that moment, Anne Marie, you were going through a real struggle from an employment standpoint because something unexpectedly had happened to you that put you in a position where you felt like you were going to have to move out of your apartment. And also, as it just so happened to be that day, your mother and your brother came in and sat in a booth right behind where Jay was seated.
Very true.
Um, and so I'm showing off my memory now, Jay. But
that's
You
crazy.
are. You
so
are.
tell us what had just occurred in your life at that time.
So I have 2 degrees in psychology, and at the time, I was working in the social work world. Um, to me, it's always been about happiness, and I wasn't finding it there. I wasn't making good money, and so I was also waitressing on Sundays at that diner. And to just compensate. And like you said,
Mhm.
I was in a place where I was barely making that rent. And so I went into that job one day and I had to leave. I had to leave. I could not do it anymore. It was a very negative environment. So what I did, and I've never done this, was I left a letter to my employer and just simply left. Um, it was a chance I took in that moment because what I did after that was I went to that diner and they loved me there. I mean, so I went there and that same day, like I left the job, went straight to the diner, and I said, give me a full time schedule. It was like the craziest thing, well, besides meeting you guys, that had ever occurred because I was taking this chance to now work on tips until I found the next best thing. And what's kind of ironic, there's a lot of things ironic about our story, but that was the next week when I met you guys. So how I tell it is like I quit the job, and then that next Wednesday, I would have been at the job I hated, but I was there at the diner serving you guys. And like what it led to was just something I would have never expected.
So
Yeah.
here you are. You're working at a diner now. You've got 2 college degrees. You're working at this diner, trying to make ends meet. You're
Mm-hmm.
concerned about how you're going to pay rent. You had just received a renewal notice that came with an increase on your rent,
Mm-hmm.
which was going to make things even tougher for you. And so, as fate would have it, the property we were going to visit was called Village Square. Where were you living at that time?
Another ironic part, Village Square.
You were living it. So you were one of our residents. And of course, we
Yes.
had no idea. We had no way of knowing that. So
Yeah.
here we are, 2 guys in a suit, and we're sitting at your booth, and so you came back over to our table. So Jay and I engaged in a conversation about how much we really liked your personality, your attitude. Remember that, Jay? And we were just
Yeah.
talking about just how great she was, and even made the comparison to the interaction with you to the hostess, who was clearly annoyed by me. And Jay was always recruiting. Every time we went anywhere, Jay was always, just observing people and trying to bring good people into our organization. And I remember, Jay, you made a comment about how, if we were really struggling, no part of you would ever have any interest in interviewing the hostess because of her attitude.
Right. That's
So,
right.
she could have got the job that you got, but she blew the interview with Jay when I made a joke about the salad bar. So you come back to our table, and I asked you if this is what you do full time, and you shared that story with us. And I then asked you, well, what would you say if I told you that we could get you 20% off on your rent? That was the hook that I used. And then Jay said that Village Square was our property, and you at that moment thought we owned Village Square. And so Jay just then played along as the owner of Village Square. No, he didn't. Jay then introduced ourselves to you. And so, Jay, what happened next?
Well, as luck would have it, I had a business card with me. And I said, listen, that 20% he's talking about could lead to a lot of different things. I don't remember if I said this at the time, but nobody grows up pretending to be a property manager. You grow up pretending to be a ballerina or a baseball player or a teacher or something pretty cool. But when you get into what we do, you find out it's pretty cool too. And, this is my 25th year in it. This is Bill's 57th year in it. And I would imagine my memory is not what Bill's is, but I would imagine I started a spiel about a career in property management and how it's never planned. Unless you go to one of the few universities that teach it, everybody else falls into it somehow or another. And on this day, you fell into it. And it was literally handed to us on a silver platter. And I say handed to us because you're the one that walked into our lives as opposed to us walking into your life. I mean, you were where you were supposed to be. We just happened to pick that restaurant. And you were assigned to our table. So think of all the different things that could have happened that day. You could have been running late. We could have picked a different restaurant. It could have been raining. Anything could have happened to make it so that interaction did not occur. But it did occur. And the rest of the story that it's led to has Bill in Texas. It has you in Florida. It has me still in the same spot where it all started. But no, there's just no telling which path these things are going to lead to. And, you mentioned connecting with family and old friends in Florida before we got on the call. None of that would have happened without that particular day.
I know.
You might be using your degrees that didn't excite you, clearly. You might be still waiting tables, which didn't excite you, clearly. But it excited you that day to the point where it excited us. So I think everybody that's listening can kind of take from that what you want. But that's what happened next, was the beginning of all of our futures and different paths that we all took. Just because you were on that day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we just happened to sit at your booth. You opened the door through your attitude and your interaction and behavior with us. And the fact that the stuffed peppers were amazing, that helped as well, which is what I had for lunch that day, were the stuffed peppers. And, but, it was, but Jay, Anne Marie, thinking about that day, I wonder how many business leaders go to a restaurant, sit down and have lunch, and they just focus on their lunch and what's in their phones and miss an opportunity. And it happens all the time. But, we walked in that day and, as engaged as you were with us, we were also engaged with you as opposed to anything else. Because, again, to the point I made earlier, Jay, you were always looking to add people to our team. And so, we both understood that walking into that restaurant, we didn't walk in because we were wanting to hire somebody, but every interaction we had, Jay, was always focused on, am I going to meet somebody today that's going to fill a position and make us a better team? Because that's what I always talked about. Everybody who joined our organization had the same purpose, and that was to make us better. And Jay embraced that. And, just through your attitude and action. So, you guys interviewed, and then I'm assuming that at some point Jay sends you an offer letter, and Goshen Terrace, I believe it was, in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Am I right? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, you do.
So you came to work for us with no experience in property management at Goshen Terrace. What was your original position? What were you doing there?
Originally, I was leasing. So you
Okay.
hired me as a leasing professional.
Okay. And then from there, you became a community manager with Berger. Am I right?
There was actually a transition there. So
Okay.
I also wanted to say quick that that moment for me that you guys were talking about there in the diner, two things. I refer to it as this. In that moment, all the stars aligned. All the stars aligned. And the second thing is you guys changed my life. So I just need
Wow.
to touch on that before we get into the career path.
Yeah. Wow,
You really
thank you.
did. You really did. I mean, I looked to both of you for advice. I have looked up to you both since the beginning. And I always say, like, Bill is responsible for me because I just feel like Bill's like the dad of the two. So I was
Yeah, I
like,
appreciate that.
Somebody
yeah.
has to be.
Yeah.
So I'm like, when I'm like, oh, yeah, Bill Nye's responsible for me. Whatever happens, it's Bill Nye. Yep. But I did start in leasing. But what's crazy, so you guys, give me this offer, and I moved from Bensalem to Westchester on a whim. I mean, it worked for me. I lived at one of your properties, so it was an easy, like, hey, we'll let you out of your lease and go to Westchester. And I didn't know anyone in Westchester, but I was willing to try something new. I was in a place that I could, and I was leasing only for 4 months there at Goshen Terrace. And then somebody came to me, I don't remember who it was, and was like, hey, you're doing really good. Do you want to move back to where you're from and be leasing and marketing manager over Westbury and Rolling Hill? And I was like,
Right.
yes, because that's where I had been from. That was Bucks County. It
Right.
was right back where it
Nice.
began.
See, now I've completely forgot about that
Yeah.
part.
Me and Ashley over there killing it
Right.
at Westboro. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And we did
Yep.
that. I was there with her in that office for 2 years and then became a community manager. And that was you too. You were still kind of there. You were on, no, I interviewed with, I think, Andrea and Jacqueline at the time, and you were still there, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we interviewed in your office, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Yep. That's right. Yep. I was still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because I left December 31st, 2020 to move to Texas. Yep.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
So then over time, an opportunity came up with Morgan Properties, and you ended up leaving Berger Communities, going to work for Morgan Properties. I remember you reached out to me about an opportunity in Florida, and so you and I had that conversation, and lo and behold, now here you are in Florida.
I mean, you're my mentor, whether you like it or not. I always gotta, put things past you before I make any decisions, just to get your ear.
And since then, Jay, you've had how many children?
The family has grown. The family has grown.
Yeah, the family has grown.
Yeah.
Going back to my original point, it all goes back to, we had a need at Berger for a recruiter. Jay and I had worked together previously at another company. And the one thing that I learned about you, Jay, from, very early on, I learned two things. One, don't trust anything you say.
But buy what I'm selling.
Yeah, but buy what you're selling, right? But no, seriously, the one thing I learned is that you've never met a stranger. And I've always believed that the job of a recruiter is to just represent the company in a way that really embraces your culture. And the culture that I've always tried to grow is a culture of putting other people first, and performance driven, care about people, be very personable. And the time that I was with Berger, I knew every employee by name and knew their families and knew their dogs, and that's just how I choose to lead. And so it all started with me reaching out to Jay and saying, hey, I need a recruiter. And Jay said, look, I can't move, for family reasons. I can't move from Richmond, Virginia to Pennsylvania. And so, we made it work. and we figured out a way to make it work. And Jay joined the team, and you guys were serving amazing stuffed peppers that day, and I grew up. My mother made the best stuffed peppers ever. But it is interesting how all this came together. But again, it's all about aligning, values and just understanding what your role is in leadership. And Jay and I were on the same page on that. And I knew that that he would make a great connection with anyone and everywhere we went, and he did. And you responded positively, and as you said, that day changed your life, and it changed our lives to know that we had that duty, responsibility, and that impact. And that's a moment that will stay with me forever. I've actually, as a guy who travels around the country speaking, I've told the Anne Marie story a few times to my audiences around the country, because it had an impact on me as well. But I couldn't have done it alone, and it wouldn't have worked the way that it did had Jay not been in the car with me that day. And
well, you just seem creepy in there by yourself too, so I kind of saved that part of it and helped.
And I probably would have had this. I would have had the salad bar and just
coffee
sat there
shaking.
munching on romaine lettuce like a rabbit. And
but to Bill's point, you never know when you're gonna have the opportunity to fix or change someone else's life. Bill and I, when we were roommates, every morning we would stop at Starbucks and I'd pretend like I didn't have any money. So, Bill bought me coffee. But just watching his interactions with the employees there, that, they are in this monotonous routine of pour, shake, stir, serve, pour, shake, stir, serve, over and over and over. They may never say a word to their customers. They may just slide the drink over. Nowadays they're making them for people that aren't even there, that are ordering them on the apps. And then, there's no interaction. So Bill just always made a point to make sure there was an interaction, whether we were picking it up from a mobile order or not. And whether that person wanted the interaction or not, they were going to get it. And it became a show. And Bill and I would play off of each other. And that show became just a production. And whether or not the other party chose to participate in that production was the determining factor on whether or not we felt like that was a person that would benefit our organization. And you participated in the production, and the rest is history. So, advice from a leadership standpoint is just always be looking for people that are interested in being in your show. And the show's been pretty good to this point. So,
yeah, well said. Always be looking for people who are interested in being a part of your show. Yeah, because every company's unique, right? It has its own culture, and not everybody is, a good match for that culture. But, in our case, it worked out beautifully. And even though all three of us have moved on to do other things, you're now with Morgan Properties. Jay, you're now with Artcraft. None of us are with Berger. But, all three of us have a love in our heart for Berger and for the time that we spent there, the relationships that we made, the lives that were changed. And, the fact that the three of us are still, able to connect and stay in touch with each other, even though our lives have gone three very different directions, we'll always be connected in a very special way for forever, right?
Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
But I think that's the power of leadership. I think, that's what good, positive leadership does, is that it influences people's lives, not just in the moment, but forever.
Absolutely. And I try and lead by example, basically from the two of you. And for me, it's been, I want to make them proud because they did take a chance on me. And that's also kind of why I keep you guys updated, because I want to know, I want you to know what I'm doing. So, you invested in a good product. And I love that you still tell the story, Bill, because one of my wow moments in my life was the day you told the story at our first summit that I was a part of. And you told the story in front of every employee at Berger Rental Communities.
Yeah.
And you had me stand up. I was only working for the company a couple months, You had me stand up in front of everyone and everyone clapped. And in that moment, I just knew that this was it. And like, I can't thank you guys enough for that, for these moments that, like you said, like will be with us for the rest of our lives. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Jay, but I'm filled with emotion right now.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a touching story, and I'm sure that our viewers are going to watch this and listen to this, and they're going to feel that emotion. I hope that they do, because it's very real. Because what we do is more than just put heads on beds. We impact people's lives in ways that we often don't even know, and I think leaders have to be aware of that. And I often look back at that day, and the first thing I wonder whatever happened to that server who wouldn't smile and engage with me. I hope her life worked out well.
Well, I'll tell you what, she's probably still there.
I was thinking the same.
Yep.
I was thinking the same.
Yep.
Still annoyed by guys with bad dad jokes.
That's right. That's right.
But the one thing that Jay and I have never had a short supply of, bad dad jokes. We are the kings of puns, for sure.
That's right.
Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun. I want to thank you both for joining us. I know our audience is going to enjoy this episode. Jay, it's good to catch up with you. It's good to see you. Congratulations on all that's been going on in your life with your family. My best to your wife, Lindsay, and to all the kids. Anne Marie, so excited for everything that's happened. And I know you've got even more exciting things that are about to happen in your life. There was nothing more exciting going to happen in your life, Jay. You've hit the peak, the pinnacle. But
I don't need anything more exciting.
But seriously, Anne Marie, I know there's more exciting things coming, and I look forward to following your story. And that day didn't just touch your life; that day touched my life, and it touched Jay's life as well. So thank you both for joining me, and thank you to our audience for tuning in and catching another episode of Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Bye, Anne Marie.
Thanks, Bill. Bye.
Well, thank you for tuning in. I hope today's conversation left you with a fresh perspective on leadership and culture. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Want to hear from other industry speakers whose goal is to bring along the next generation of leaders? Then log on to multifamilymedianetwork.com, where you'll meet some of the most innovative voices in the industry.